Hello, welcome back to Learn Economia. Today we are going to look on to the limitations of micro and macroeconomics. So let's get started with the same. Before moving on to the limitations of both microeconomics and macroeconomics, let me tell you about what is microeconomics and what is macroeconomics. So these are the two important branches of economics where microeconomics studies individual economic units. So when it comes to individual economic units, we will be having an individual consumer, individual firm, and so on. So this would be the subject matters of microeconomics. Now, what was macroeconomics? Macroeconomics studies the aggregates, or it considers the economy as a whole. So we will be having certain items like GDP, national income, etc. that would be coming as aspects under macroeconomics. So both microeconomics and macroeconomics form the fundamental to understanding of the economy. But we need to understand that these would also have got some limitations. And this would be the basic topic of discussion for today. And let's proceed with the limitations of micro as well as macroeconomics. So we start with microeconomics. The basic issue with microeconomics is the ceteris paribus assumption. So when we consider certain laws in microeconomics, for example, the law of demand or law of supply, we have an assumption called ceteris paribus. That is, all else remaining constant or other things remaining the same. So when we consider this assumption, it appears to be something problematic because we are trying to isolate the effects of one considered economic variable from the other economic variables. So what we consider is that we would be considering all the other factors as constant, and we will just look on to the relationship between only two variables at a time. So which would be again causing problems. For example, when we consider law of demand, we just look on to the effect of price on quantity demanded. Again, when it consider the case with law of supply, we consider the effect of price on quantity supplied. We just assume that all other factors influencing demand and supply would be remaining the same. But when it comes to reality, actually this is not so. When we consider the demand for a particular commodity by a particular consumer, it would be influenced by several factors simultaneously. The same is again with the case of supply. So again, that is yet another aspect that you have to consider when it comes to microeconomics. That is one of the limitations that we have in microeconomics. Now, moving to the next important limitation of microeconomics, the kind of simplifying assumptions. That means sometimes microeconomics might not be capturing the complexity of the real world. Why? This is due to unrealistic assumptions. Unrealistic assumption. How can you say that this is happening? We might be making some unrealistic predictions in microeconomics. For example, we say that consumers would always try to maximize their utility, or consumers are utility maximizing agents. And when it considers the case of producers, we assume that they are profit maximizers. But the problem here is that sometimes these people would be making loss, and this is not taken into consideration as far as the ideal producer in a microeconomic setting is concerned. So producer in the arena of microeconomic would be profit maximizers, or they would be intending to maximize their profit. They are always rational. Whether it is producer or consumer, they are rational. They try to deal with their objective function. They would try to maximize their utility of profit and would be trying to reduce the loss or minimize loss. But in reality, this might not be what is happening always. Sometimes people would be, again, producers would be making a loss. That is another aspect to be considered as a limitation in microeconomic scenario. Now, market failure. Yet another issue with microeconomics. Sometimes microeconomics won't be addressing market failure. So it just shows the inability of price to capture all information. So this would definitely lead to what is called inefficiency. This would be caused by something called asymmetric information, public goods, and so on. So such aspects might not be addressed by market mechanism, which will lead to market failures. And again, these form one of the important problems of microeconomics. Now, another aspect that we have here is called limited scope. I have already told you that microeconomics just focus on the individual economic units. In such a scenario, microeconomics fails to take into consideration the interaction between different markets. It just takes into consideration the partial analysis of the economy. It just look onto one market at a time. It do not take into consideration the entire element scenario, or it just forget about the idea of wholeness. Instead, it just take into consideration the individual economic units. So it's another issue with microeconomics. Now, having discussed a lot about the issues and limitations of microeconomics, we are proceeding to the limitations of macroeconomics. As I was telling you in the beginning of the session, macroeconomics deals with the aggregates. So, when we consider aggregates, we will be having issues related to aggregation. Because aggregation would always lead to oversimplification, because we might be dealing with the complex interactions, and we might be hiding the variations, and that will be causing issues in future. So that is one of the important problem with macroeconomics. Again, we have the economic rationality scenario. So we assume about the case of rationality. We have an assumption of rationality here. We think that firms as well as individuals would be behaving rationally. But when it comes to actual decision making, there would be certain issues like the cognitive biases. Sometimes what happens is that we will be guided by our subjective thoughts, subjective value judgments, etc. So this might be making one person's choice different from the other person's choice. Sometimes this might lead to what is called loss, and such elements are not taken into consideration as far as macroeconomics are being concerned. So that is one of the important problem with macroeconomics. Now you have dynamic nature of economy, another important issue. Sometimes what happens is that macroeconomics models would be struggling to capture the dynamic element. So dynamic means it involves something called change. The economy is always changing. It's not like a steady state that we have in the economy always. It is subject to change. So, especially when we consider some rapid economic change as a result of some developments like technological change or structural shifts or something called business cycle fluctuations, that will be leading to several issues by considering something called intertemporal aspects. That means the decision that you take today will be having its repercussions or consequences for you tomorrow as well. And such aspects are rarely considered as far as macroeconomics are being taken, which is yet another issue with macroeconomics. Now we have what is called data limitations. Here what happens is that only when we have data related to many elements like national income, GDP, and so on, we will be able to arrive at the aggregate picture of the economy. But when it comes to macroeconomics, sometimes we won't be getting the actual data because sometimes revisions and measurement errors would be there. Revisions means you need to revise the data. Some periodic changes should be taken into consideration. Measurement errors will make the data errorsome. So it will be questioning the accuracy of the data, and definitely macroeconomic analysis as well as the policy recommendations which is based on such kind of analysis would be affected very badly by this data limitations. So which is yet another problem that we have in the case of macroeconomics. Now, we could find that though microeconomics and macroeconomics play a very, very important role by providing some frameworks for analyzing the economic behavior and policy, we need to understand that these are not free from limitations. These have got some limitations as well. And we need to go for something like we need to consider the other perspectives like the interdisciplinary approaches. Interdisciplinary approaches. Now we could understand that many arenas are evolving like behavioral economics. So such kind of interdisciplinary approach would be reducing some of the issues that economics would be having. So when we go for interdisciplinary approaches, we will be able to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the economy, and that's very much required. That is it for today. Thanks for watching. You can like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos. You can also join our free Telegram community. I'll be providing the link of the same in the description box. Also, you can download the Learn Oikonomia app. If you're preparing for any competitive exam in economics, this app would be of great use for you because you'll be getting previous year question papers, weekly tests, as well as some study materials here. So you can download it. I'll be providing the link of the same in the description box. That's it. Thank you.